And welcome to the Beardicus Show. My name is Beardicus, and today I will be talking about Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. Really quickly, I would like to make a note that my 3DS does not have any capture card capabilities, so I actually can't record, couldn't record any of the footage of my playthrough, so much like the E3 video last time, this is largely just going to be this. It's unscripted, but I do have some note cards. That being said, this is actually the second version of this video, because the first version ended up being way longer than it was supposed to, so maybe I'll upload that as like an extended version, but for now, we have this. So, as I said, my cards are out of order. Hold on. There we go. Should have fixed that earlier. Anyway, by the way, if it seems like I'm jumping from one point to another, it's because I don't want this to go as long as it did before. Anyway, so as I said, I can't record any footage. However, I can show you this. These are the amiibo of the main characters. You have Alm over here. This is Alm. This is Celica. They're the main characters. They each have their own story. And you play as both of them, and they each have their own story of their own part of this battle, war, whatever you want to call it. But overall, the story of this game, I felt, was rather lacking. It's not that it's a bad story. It's actually pretty good, especially toward the end, once the enemy and villain motivations start to be revealed. It gets really interesting, but until that point, it's pretty boring. For the most part, the Alm and Celica's motivations are basically, we're over here at point A, we want to get over here to point B, which just happens to be the opposite side of the continent, with a lot of enemies in the way, and that's about it. Plot revelations are far and few between, few and far between, whatever. The twists are very obvious. There's like one major twist for both Alm's route and Celica's route, but they're both so painfully obvious that, in fact, I would say that Alm's route gives his twist away no fewer than 3 times over the course of the game. And it still somehow treats it like you're not supposed to know, which I think is kind of amazing. Likewise, Celica's twist is also pretty predictable, although I don't think the game ever really gives that one away. It's more predictable in like a meta sense. If you stop and think about it, you'll figure it out pretty much immediately. Also, this is pretty much a result of this being a remake of an NES game where plots were pretty thin just on average. But that being said, they do try to add a few plot threads throughout the game, and it's kind of clumsily done, but like that's understandable because it is kind of hard to take an established story and insert a new plot without disrupting the entire plot. So the stories they did add are just kind of brought up, and then the payoff comes, but it just kind of peters out immediately, and it's not really... the setup makes it seem more interesting than it is, and if you play the game, you might know what I'm talking about. It's, without giving anything away, it's the mirror. That's specifically what I'm talking about. You'll know it when you get there. And that's it for story, so moving on to characters. Now, I've always had the opinion that Fire Emblem games, I mean, they have okay stories, but they have really great characters, which is important because permadeath is such a big deal in this game that if they didn't have fun and likable characters, you wouldn't care when they died. And this game definitely delivers, especially compared to the original version. they've really fleshed out all of the characters. They all get new lines of dialogue to make them feel even more important. And beyond that are the support conversations, where you learn more about the characters through their interactions with each other. There are a lot fewer supports than there have been in previous Fire Emblem games, especially Awakening and Fates, and this may not be a universal opinion, but I think that's actually a good thing, because I felt that Awakening and Fates both had too many supports in that a lot of them felt kind of like filler, whereas in this game, all of the supports were at least somewhat interesting, and you at least learn about the characters every time. None of them are just there to be there, you know? So, I thought that was interesting. And another little bit that really adds to these supports is that they're now fully voice acted. In fact, pretty much the entire game is fully voice acted. There are only a few exceptions here and there for some reason. Like the first town, you go to the street and there are 3 or 4 characters there. You talk to them. Most of them are voiced, and then one of them isn't for some reason. And it's a little jarring, and it happens throughout the entire game, but it's only limited to these extra characters. Other than that, it's fully voiced. And more importantly, the voice acting is not bad. Like, it gets a little awkward at times. Sometimes the actor puts emphasis on like the wrong part of the sentence. They'll have like the wrong tone while they're reading, but ultimately it's all very passable. In fact, none of it's bad. It's all good, and I'd actually say that a lot of it is great. I was really surprised by the quality of it, especially Alm and Celica and their main character and their main friends, Tobin, Gray, May, and Bowie, just to name a few names. All those characters, great voice actors, and this becomes really important during battles, because just to bring that extra level of like just connection between the characters, characters actually react to certain events during battle. For example, if they're close to another ally, and that ally crits their enemy, the first character will comment on it and cheer them on. Or if the other character has low health, the first character will remind them to heal. And I think that that's such a nice touch. It adds another level. It's like it adds it makes the battles feel less disjointed. It's one big battlefield and everybody's there. Everybody can see what's going on. I think that's really an important touch. And beyond that, at the end of the battle, somebody will also make a comment on how it went, whether it went really well, whether they thought it was a close call, or even if a unit died. Every character has a generic death quote, like a mourning quote, if you will. Mourning with a U, that is. And those by themselves are already kind of sad, because it reminds you that the dead character is going to affect everyone. But if the dead character is directly related to the character speaking, for example, a sibling or a loved one or anything like that, the character commenting will like break down and they will beg the character to not be dead, and it adds so much to the game. It's such a nice touch. I've always wanted this kind of thing in the game, because it really makes permadeath that much worse. Like the death quotes were already there to make you feel bad when a character dies, but now you see it affecting someone else, and it adds so much to the game. It makes permadeath that much more meaningful, and I really hope they keep doing that going forward. And then you have two, or at least one big addition to this game, dungeons, and another returning feature, skirmishes. So a dungeon is exactly what it sounds like. It's a big area where you explore in like a typical adventure game style. And skirmishes are optional fights that appear occasionally on the map that you can fight for additional experience. Once you finish a dungeon, you can always go back in for more experience there, so both of these are ways to level grind. And I'm not really against the ability to level grind in Fire Emblem because a lot is at stake with permadeath. But the problem is that you're occasionally forced to level grind. And what I mean by that is there are side quests in this game that will require you to go back to a dungeon that you've already cleared. And you'll have to fight your way through it again, fighting enemies again, and getting more experience that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten, which is level grinding. And that may seem like it's not really forced level grinding because it is a side quest, but there are also times where the skirmishes will force you to level grind because one of the ways skirmishes can appear is by being summoned by a mandatory fight, and then the skirmish will chase you through the map. In other words, to get to the mandatory fight, you have to fight your way through the skirmishes, which will keep appearing if you don't keep them in check. At one point, I had to fight my way through 3 different skirmishes to get to the next battle, which really slowed down progress, and I did not have fun there because I felt like I was being forced to not play the game for a while because the game wanted me to do this, but I wanted to do the other thing. But that is somewhat my related to my opinion on level grinding in general, which is that I don't like it. And for related reasons, I don't like dungeons. And what I mean by that is that both the dungeons in this game and level grinding in general are both slow processes with a lot of repetitive and tedious battles. And for that reason, I don't like the dungeons in this game. If you die at the end of a dungeon, you have to go all the way back. If Alm or Celica dies and it's game over, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And just in general, battles in dungeons take place on the same map every time. Not like between all of the battles in one dungeon use the same map. And then all of the dungeons in a different dungeon use a different map, but they all use the same map. And that means that there's no variety in the level layout, like pillars, stairs, everything is in exactly the same position. Even the units' starting positions are exactly the same. And while it's not exactly the same, a lot of the enemies in these dungeons are the same throughout that dungeon. Although there is some variance. Sometimes it'll be like 3, sometimes it'll be 4 enemies. But ultimately, you can usually finish every battle in 1 or 2 turns. And since everything is pretty much the same, usually it'll be the exact same 1 or 2 turns unless you're actively trying to change up your strategy. But overall, it's so repetitive, it's not really fun. And so I didn't like the dungeons in this game, but I'm not opposed to them coming back. But I just want them to have like a complete overhaul if they do. I've tried coming up with ways for them to work, and honestly, I really couldn't. I would love to see Intelligent Systems try something with them again, but I don't know what that would be. And lastly, I want to talk about the weapons. There are a few severe changes in how weapons work. Most notably, there's no weapon triangle, which going into this really screwed me up for a while. In fact, axes aren't even a main weapon. You can get a couple of them, but they're considered like miscellaneous weapons instead of, axes. No unit uses axes specifically, and it's just weird to go back and not have the weapon triangle. But beyond that, the actual weirdest change, I think, was magic. Because magic in this game, as a result of the fact that there is no weapon durability in this game, magic had to have a different durability. Since you're not casting uses of the spell, you're actually casting unit durability. By which I mean you're casting these spells from the unit's HP. And that can get pretty expensive. While the starting spells, Fire and Thunder, cost 1 and 2 HP respectively, I think the most expensive spell cost about 16 HP, which is a lot. If you're not paying attention, you can very easily get yourself killed. I mean, of course, if your mage is going to die if they cast one more fireball, they're not going to cast the fireball. But it is very important to keep an eye on your HP, because that can very easily get you killed. That being said, despite this nerf, I suppose, magic ignores terrain bonuses. So if, like how most of the time if a unit is standing in trees, they're harder to hit. But in this game, magic ignores that. If you're standing in trees, magic's gonna have the same chance to hit you as it would if you're out in the open, which is really useful because just in general, the terrain bonuses in this game seem to be a lot higher than they are in other Fire Emblems. So magic, for that reason, is going to be very useful. And for this next reason, magic is going to be pretty overpowered, because resistance in this game is pretty rare. Most classes that have high defense have very low resistance, and likewise most classes with high resistance have very low defense. But there are ways to get that defense stat up to at least respectable levels, if for no reason other than just equipping them with a shield. But there's really nothing you can do about low resistance, and as such, magic can really just ruin your day. But at the same time, other than bosses and magic users, most enemies have very low resistance as well. So magic can really ruin their day too. So it's all just a matter of perspective, really. But in conclusion, I'm gonna wrap this up. In conclusion, this is a very different Fire Emblem. It felt very weird to play. Not different in a bad way, but also not really in a good way. It's just different. That being said, for unrelated reasons, I did like the game. By which I mean, I didn't like the game for the changes or for the differences. I liked it for other things such as the characters, just the gameplay in general. I did ultimately like it. So I do recommend it, especially if you think the previous Fire Emblem games have gotten a little too waifu dating simmy. This game doesn't have that, so you'll probably be very happy to hear that. But overall, that's my opinion of the game. It's got some flaws, but I think that it is a good game. In fact, I'd say it's my favorite Fire Emblem on the 3DS, once you get used to the wonkiness of it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. If you'd like to subscribe, you'll receive notifications for future videos, so go ahead and hit the subscribe buttons. You can check out my other videos. I have another channel where I play games. So yeah, that's about it. So see you next time, and goodbye.